Hi, Govind J. Raman here for Paper Napkin Wisdom. Govind J. Raman here for Paper Napkin Wisdom. And you know how this always goes, right? Murphy's Law, when you plan on something going wrong and you actually even set up for it, it goes wrong anyway. Well, that's what happened here today. We're doing a live stream, which we've never done before for Paper Napkin Wisdom. And of course, optimistically and ambitiously, I planned everything to happen at sort of very quick intervals. So 1 minute here, 1 minute there, and another minute there. This whole thing came about because we stumbled over the goal, the timeline. We weren't even thinking about the fact that it was 150th show until we were publishing the last few sequences of shows and realized, oh my gosh, we've already got 149 going live last week. We should be doing something to celebrate 150 episodes and talk a little bit about what we've learned with all of the napkins, with all of the work that we've done over this time. And I think that what's really truly astounding about this journey, and I'm trying to make sure that we get the guests coming on here, but one of the things that's really been amazing about the journey is just how many people have actually stepped up and contributed. And I'm really excited that some of our great contributors over the last 3 years, and it was October of 2013 that this all started. And some of the great contributors that have been around right from the beginning are coming back. And surprise number one, I've got Bill Dost, who just logged in. Bill, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom.
Hey, I'm happy and excited to be here, Govind. Congratulations on 150 podcasts. It's terrific.
That's awesome. And so, Bill, you actually are one of the few people who've actually contributed to Paper Napkin Wisdom twice, right? So you were on a podcast back in November of 2013 and then again in April of 2016. And so just earlier this year. So just for people who are listening, episode number 7 and episode number 137. So 130 episodes between your two episodes. What changed for you over that time frame?
Oh, you blanked out there. What changed for me over that time period?
Yeah.
It's been a world of change, Govind. I believe that the first podcast was about the fact when the going gets tough, the tough have to get a lot of faith. And the second podcast was about give me my family and I can do anything. And I think, really they go hand in hand. I have a background of faith and so my faith is very, very much intrinsic to who I am. But faith is great and it's very, very important. But if you don't have your family to fuel you and to support you, often you can be alone. And so what I realized was that you need to bring your family along. And for me, I need to bring my spouse along and to run with her, not without her. And so, the journey continues to deepen and it continues to go on and on. I know I recently sent you a new a paper napkin and I'm just waiting for you now to tell me when it's time. But, I get excited about how the world pushes us to grow and change in our journey.
One of the things that I think is amazing about all of the paper napkins, and I want to see if this is true for you, is that actually saying the paper napkin out loud in this way, in this medium, and sharing it with so many people, did that change how you lived it in any way?
I think it crystallized it. I certainly believed my paper napkin wisdom before I was able to write it down and give it to you. But then when I'm forced to actually coalesce it and bring a thought around to it and say, I believe this is internal to me. It's like saying I have a core value, but I've never articulated it and I've never written it down. I think you sort of take the next step when you internalize it and you've actually put it out into the atmosphere of the universe and say, not only do I believe it, but I'm willing to stand behind my words. So absolutely, I think it's a journey, but you take that next step and you sort of deepen it and broaden the horizon.
Yeah, and I think it's really powerful when you think about crystallizing the words. I mean, I remember when I did my paper napkin, and I'm sure this is going to come up a few more times over the course, but the first time I did a paper napkin, Rob Simon sort of turned around the podcast on me and said, I want to get your paper napkin wisdom. And mine was, when you want to grow, you have to do what scares you and do it in public. And everybody who came on did it in public, right? It shared their wisdom in public. And that forces you to grow. That forces you to move on, I think.
I agree. I think when you open your mouth in front of a public audience, it's either put up or shut up, isn't it? So the eyes are staring.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so again, episode number 7 was there will be days when you believe you're going to lose it all, and you have to double down on faith. And then the second one was give me my family and I can accomplish anything. And yeah, you have another one sitting in the line in the wings for another time. But you know, those are sort of somewhat aligned, right, with who you are. I mean, they're very authentic to who you are. So I understand what you said when it wasn't a big jump away from who and what you are. But tell me how it crystallizes it, and just really briefly.
Sure. I think what happens is that I can believe anything, but when I start telling you it, I have to now make sure I'm living it, not just 50% of the time or 75% of the time, but you have to authentically live it 100% of the time, or as best as you can towards that 100, and start moving forward with it. So one of the big things is that Maggie listened to both the podcasts, especially the second one. She looked at me and she said, "Boy, oh, you were lucky that we went through all that change and you can really live to this." And so it was like, yeah, I know, right? So yeah, you have to be able to share it.
Yeah, and there's a whole different level of accountability when your life partner, when you're, in your case, Maggie, your wife, listens to it and can hold your feet to the fire.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Bill, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you and appreciate our friendship, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Govan. I really appreciate it. Talk to you soon, man. Congratulations again.
Thank you. So, one of the things that's amazing when we think about Paper Napkin Wisdom, and we think about all of the things and all of the people who've been on over time, it's amazing to me just how much the contributors, the people who were on Paper Napkin Wisdom, actually got from being on. And I've heard stories anecdotally. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this live show, was to create the opportunity for people to interact, ask questions of the guests, ask questions of some of the contributors who've been on Paper Napkin Wisdom. And if you are listening right now, so if you're on the live stream on Paper Napkin Wisdom, please go on to the Facebook site and just chat and ask questions. I'm blessed by my friends. I'm surrounded right now by some of my forum mates. And for those of you who are not familiar with Forum, Forum is a phenomenal thing that allows people to share and grow experiences. You have to be an entrepreneur to join. And in the room right now, I've got 3 of my forum mates, and one of them specifically is manning the controls, is filming all of this, and is actually doing the documenting for the live stream. So he's looking at the Facebook site, and if there are any questions, we'll bring them on. As we wait for our next guest, and I'm not sure if they're here yet, but when we think about living out loud, when we think about actually going into the public, owning some wisdom, we definitely have to make sure that we live authentically. The visibility is accountability. And for me, I think one of the most powerful things about doing Paper Napkin Wisdom has been creating that visibility around what I'm doing and doing it in public, so that there was no opportunity, there was no option for me not to live it out loud, to actually be who I am trying to be. And for those of you who don't know and are new to Paper Napkin Wisdom, the people who came on, or the early guests, I was hungry to learn from them. So we've got a couple of our next guests. Right now, I want to go to Fran Gross. So Fran, are you there?
I am.
Fran, welcome back to Paper Napkin Wisdom. It's great to see you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
That's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book.
And what's so meaningful about it, Govan, is the words that are inside that has just embraced me. Like, I forget what week we are in this year, but it's super, super exciting, and how worn out this book is getting.
That's fantastic. So what's amazing about that book is in the version that you showed up, and I'm going to show you a version of the book a little bit later on, but the version you showed was the early version, right? It was the pre-release that only a very, very small number of people have. But you have it, of course, because your company Advantages designed and printed it. So thank you.
That's true. We definitely get some of those perks when you do the work.
Mm-hmm. So you were episode 117. More than a year ago, so June of 2015, and what's kind of cool about that is you were one of the very few that actually were done in person. You were done in my office here in Ottawa.
Yep, worth the trip for sure.
Yeah. So what has changed for you since you were on Paper Napkin Wisdom last week?
I loved your last guest, hold the feet to the fires comment. That was really, Bill's comment was really great. But I'm going to say for me, what has really changed is really emotionally connecting to all the other napkins and finding so much wisdom in them and being able to impart that on a daily basis. So as much as the flip the funnel and make a megaphone is definitely mine, and I say that all the time, and it's so true. I've really learned so much and embraced so much from everybody else's wisdom. To the point where I have a little napkin wall over here. Can't really see it, but it's starting on its own. So I really enjoyed imparting the wisdom of others into my own repertoire.
That's amazing. And I'm just gonna, one quick thing before we go. You really live this stuff, and I'm just gonna toot your horn because you won't do it. But you've been Inc. 5000, Inc. 500, and one of the top 50 places to work in America, which is a huge set of accomplishments. And I know it's because you're living out loud. You're living a very authentic and accountable life. So congratulations. Listen,
to me, I still see the yellow linoleum on the garage floor when we first started this company. So I totally embraced that completely. Oh my gosh. So excited, but the truth is, the only way to live your life out loud is to help, at least the way I see it in the worldview, is to help others achieve far beyond what was possible.
That's outstanding. Thanks, guys. It's really great to see you. Thanks for being on.
Bye, Christina.
Christina Harbridge, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Christina, we can barely hear you.
How's that? Any better?
No better. I don't know why. I don't know. Your volume maybe turned down?
It's up all the way. Let me try something else. How's that? Any better?
It's a little bit better. We're going to have to go with it because you're awesome.
I'll yell. How's that?
Even better. Even better. So I got to ask you a question. Are you wearing your Pac-Man skirt?
I am not wearing my Pac-Man skirt.
What?
I know. I should have thought about that. My bad.
I was positive that I was going to see Pac-Man today. Hey, look. So you were episode number 47, which was in January of 2014, and you said, "Watch for what you like." Can you believe it was 2014?
I can't believe it was 2014.
Yeah. So 2014, and you said, "Watch for what you like," which is something that I think has changed my life a lot. Like, it really impacted me greatly. The other thing that was really amazing about you, and you're just an incredible human being, but what's really incredible about you is you checked back on me, because in that paper napkin when we were talking, you caught me. I was not living very accountably to myself, and I had these bad habits that I wanted to break, and I was hard on myself about that at the time. And you told me to look at it a slightly different way, didn't you? Do you remember what you said?
I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
So what you said, Christina, back then was watching for what you like meant, in terms of personal accountability, celebrating when I caught myself doing something wrong, not beating myself up for the behavior, but celebrating that I was aware enough to see that it was happening. And that empowered me to really change things, I think, for me, where ordinarily, one bad decision or one bad habit coming out, whether it's skipping the gym, playing small, removing myself from environment, whatever it was, being vindictive, being dismissive, whatever those things were, it used to give me permission to do more of them. Like behaving badly gave me permission to behave more badly because, screw it. It didn't matter anymore. But watching for what I liked really turned that around for me, and celebrating myself in that way was really, really cool.
I kind of see it as like a mind hack in a weird way. Our subconscious hides from us the stuff we don't like. So if someone bites their nails, I think the reason they keep biting is they admonish themselves when they notice they're biting. So if we celebrate when we notice that we say we'll notice it more often and say it less. It's a little hack. If I say, oh no, I'm not going to like that feeling, so I'll miss all the crap I'm doing that I don't like.
Yeah. And I think that it's an amazing hack, but it's an accountability hack because like a lot of us are entrepreneurs, so we don't have to be accountable, right? Like a lot of us are entrepreneurs so that we can just get out of this accountability game. But this made me way more accountable to more people.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think we're wired to look at things in a negative way. So I see my little picture up there and my hair's fuzzy and I can focus on all the crap that's wrong with my face right now. But that will only show up in my behavior and then I'll seem distant and weird.
Yeah.
So if I watch for what I like, I'm just going to have a different physiology. My hair is kind of fuzzy though. I don't really like
Yeah, like you don't see the dog painting in the background, which is
that's Ron English, amazing artist, by the way.
Yeah, amazing piece. So what has changed for you? I mean, we talked about me, but what has changed for you in the last 2 years?
Wow, what has changed for me in the last 2 years? You ask very good questions that are kind of impossible to answer. I think what's changed is really digging into the idea that people have a basic need to feel understood.
Louder.
Yeah. People have a basic need to feel understood and just really playing with that about how we often talk to talk rather than to fill someone's need to feel understood. And so I've been playing a lot with that the last couple of years, how to do that. That's
amazing. I think that's incredible. I think that it was a bit of a surprise because I participated in a thing called Entrepreneurial Masters Program, which is an EMP, which is something out of EO. And I don't know why I didn't look at the roster one year and in the year 3 and I walk out and there's Christina wearing Pac-Man skirt coming to blow the room away, and you did. But one of the things that you talk about is showing up in that way, right? I mean, it's you discussed it. How important is it for us to even talk out loud about the things that we are working on ourselves? Because we tend to only try to paint ourselves in Teflon and be masters at everything, right?
Right. Yeah, I think how people feel about themselves around us is everything. And when we're only talking about what's great about us, it creates distance. When we talk about the real stuff, it's sort of refreshing. So when you asked me what I'd been up to, what I wanted to say is I have a new book that's out. But that felt so transactional, I had to stop and be like, I don't want to make this conversation about a transaction of a freaking book. I want to make this about somebody listening to you get one thing that can make their business better.
But what's amazing about that is that you're so not transactional that your book came out and you didn't even say anything about it.
I know.
Like you didn't tell anybody. Like I don't. How did you do that? How do you not tell anybody?
I know, it's fascinating though because friends made it happen without me asking, and I believe that transparency and being real, not being vulnerable, because that almost feels like then we're trying to be something we're not. But most of us were raised in a generation of just get over it, and we numb all these feelings that we think are negative. And so in answer to your question, the more we talk about how we're really feeling, the more connected we are. And so I didn't talk about my book because the book's there for the people that have worked with me that want more information. This conversation is about learning and about like how are you and I doing and how are the people listening doing.
So the other thing that's going to blow people away, okay, because you are, speaker coach, You have helped hundreds of people speak their truth, their real truth, in a better way. Like you're amazing at all of this stuff. But your podcast with me was the first one you've ever done. You've never done it before then. Like, why not? And have you done it since? Like, because you were supposed to do a bunch of stuff after, right? Yeah, why? Why? Why are you not doing it?
I think this is, let me make a commitment to you. I'm going to do something in the next 9 months.
So you're going to do something?
I will do something.
Okay, because you were telling me about some production, like almost TV. It felt like there was some other production that you were going to get right into right after this.
I think I get scared. I think when we only work in a room, we can control what's going on, and I think a lot of us are control freaks. Doing what you do just releases a lot of control, and I credit you for it. So thanks for the push. I commit to the next time I'll do something.
All right. I'm checking in with you in 90 days, Christina. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Bye.
Bye. Adam Robinson, are you there?
How are we doing, sir?
Great to see you, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, doing real well.
So other than like winning everywhere, because all I see is hierology winning stuff. I mean, you guys have grown ridiculously since 2014. So November of 2014, you were on Paper Napkin Wisdom and you said, hire great people and get the heck out of their way, right?
That's right.
So other than like winning everything, what's going on in your world?
You know, the statement I made then is it's more true every single day. I think the reason our team has been able to achieve this success and maintain this growth rate is because we hired the right people, and then I lived it. They got out of their way. But I'll tell you, we proactively turned over or transitioned 100% of my leadership team in 2015, in early 2016, 100%.
Why was that necessary?
Because, you know, when you're growing a business 25, 30% quarterly or more, the job changes every 6 months. The seat you're in changes. My seat as CEO, our VP of Finance's seat, our head of sales seat, the person that is that person at $2 million of revenue, maybe the person at 10, they might not be. And if I'm not ripping the Band-Aids on those decisions, then I'm not doing my job. And so it was, quarter after quarter, an evaluation and assessment, of am I the right person for this job? If not, where am I right? Where can I move and add value to the business? And we've done that constantly. And it's made all the difference. It's the only reason we've achieved success.
So when you think about it, how do you get out of your own way then? Like in that example, right? Because the company's growing so quickly. I mean, from 2014 to now, I think at the time you had 50 employees, or like it was smaller. You were
right.
Maybe not 50, but you were nowhere near the size you are now. You've gone to market in a huge way, and in your sector, you're dominating from a growth point of view. How have you gotten out of your way?
But so what I found is when I put when I properly define the role, and I put the right person in that role, and I know they understand the expectations, and then as long as that's what I want to know. Do you have what you need to execute the plan? If the answer is yes, I'm going to trust you to then do that, and I'm going to check in with you periodically, but I'm not going to get in your business every day, and I'm not going to drive by and ask you a bunch of questions, and I'm not going to jump over the top of you in meetings, and I'm not going to drive you crazy. And I'm not going to move the goalpost either. We've agreed together on an outcome, and I think you're the person, and you say you have what you need, I'm good. And, sometimes that means people fail, and that's also okay as long as we learn from it and move forward. So it's really, how do I say it in my own way? It's confirmation that we understand where we're going and that the person's committed to the plan. And once that's happened, I just have to have the discipline as the leader to not interfere.
Yeah. So let's talk about interfering versus accountability, because there's a fine line there, right? I mean, you talked about people failing and it's okay as long as they've learned from it and they're moving in the right direction. But when does that turn into, no, you're not the right person anymore for this role. We've grown, you've changed your priority, whatever. Like, things have changed. Tell me about that decision making.
Well, there's a pattern that emerges, at a leadership team level with someone who you get a sense that they're not scaling with the role, and just you get this feeling that things are stuck. Things are stuck. They're not moving forward, and the solutions aren't presenting themselves. And so the question needs to be, help me understand why we're not able to accomplish the things you and I committed to do. Tell me what's not happening or what I'm not giving you so that you can be successful. And if there's not a great answer there, I'm not really sure. It's just not happening. That's usually the beginning of that conversation. So that if we both agreed on the goal, and now we're both agreeing that the goal wasn't met, and you're telling me you're not sure where we go from here, my next conversation is going to be, do you think you're the right person to bring us through this? And so it's not me saying, I disagree with how you did it, or I think you should do it this way. It's me saying, I'm here to help you. If you don't think you're the right person anymore, you got to tell me, because I'm pretty sure we don't want to go through this again. And in all the cases, the person in that role has raised their hand and said, I need to do this differently, or I need to do something else.
Yeah, that's awesome. Adam Robinson, Hierology. I'm thrilled that you came back. Hey, we got to get you back on Paper Napkin Wisdom. You were episode 105, November of 2014. Thanks, man.
It's been fun to watch your success in this podcast and all you're doing. So congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
Great.
See you soon.
Okay.
All right. So, I like to quote Adam's Paper Napkin pretty regularly when I'm out there in the world, because I think that as entrepreneurs, and Adam said this just now, that as entrepreneurs, we tend to too often, I think, actually get in our way and create these situations that are completely unworkable. And we just had our next guest pop on, Alex Sharfin.
Hey, how you doing, Govin? Yeah.
It's great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So, Alex, you've been on Paper Napkin Wisdom twice. It's awesome to see you here. I got to commend you on your taste in microphones, by the way.
Very cool. I'm on Snapchat. I'm showing everybody that we're live on Paper Napkin Wisdom here right now, because I was just on a phone call that I cut short because I didn't realize I had to go live. And now I'm sending it to my whole story and to that guy.
That's good. Because that explains it all. Snapchat explains all.
See, Snapchat is my friend right now.
That's great.
How you been, Govin?
I'm doing really well. How you been?
I'm doing really well. This is an exciting live thing that you're doing here.
I can't believe it. We don't do the multi-camera live thing. This is my first ever live thing. I mean, Alex is taking live Facebooking to another level, and so
you
Alex,
give me a system, we'll hack it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but talk about that, right? So, episode number 37 in January of 2014, and then episode number 125 in August of 2015. So just over a year ago. And in between then, there have been dinners in Athens. I found the name of the restaurant. It was Horizontes.
Horizon, yeah.
So with all of those kinds of places and all the things that we've done, what's changed over the 2 years since you were first on Paper Napkin Wisdom and what you're doing now?
Oh, geez. I think everything. Like literally everything. Since the first time I was on Paper Napkin Wisdom, I think Katie and I closed down a coaching business that we had for years. We transitioned a lot of clients to go work with the coaches that we had and no longer work with us. We started working on our products, on really creating a product line of classes and educational experiences. And then we put that out. And in May of 2015, gosh, it's weird to get all this timing right. So from the first time I was with you, in May of 2015, I did a 10-minute talk in Joe Polish's office at Genius Network. And that talk went crazy. And And I ended up speaking at the annual convention for Joe. I spoke for you at MIT twice. I went and spoke for Robin Sharma up in Canada. And so really over the course of the past year, fundamentally everything in our lives has changed. We moved into this office in January. So we now have this 10,000 square foot entrepreneurial playground here in Austin. And things have been in momentum since maybe it might have been my Paper Napkin Wisdom thing that kicked it off.
So do you remember what you said on that first paper napkin? Do you remember what it was?
Oh, gosh, I should have looked this up. I feel unprepared now. What did I put, Govind?
Responsibility over blame.
I put that on Facebook all the time. That's like the best thing in the world to me. Yeah.
And then the next thing you wrote was, you're only as good
as your next speech. Yeah.
Right. And I remember when you said that, I didn't understand it at first. And in the conversation, what you talk about is that tomorrow is a fresh day. Every day you get to start all over again.
Yeah, I think that, so here's this thing that I've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs about. I just went up and did an EO event in St. Louis, and there was about 50 people in the room. And I asked the entire room the same thing I ask everybody. As you approach a goal, a destination, a finish line, that thing you thought you wanted, doesn't it lose importance to you? And everybody in the room kind of starts to slow nod like, yeah, it sure does. And so has that ever not happened to you? And everybody kind of goes, no, it really happens. And so for me, entrepreneurs, the process, the journey, the getting there, that is where we really actualize and stay in momentum. So when I say you're only as good as your next speech, that comes from high school speech class. Rick Lara, he told us that for 4 years. But what I learned from that was that it doesn't matter if you just won or lost. The opportunity that matters is the next one.
Yeah, and that's been transformative for me. Alex, I'm really grateful you popped on today.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for helping us celebrate.
For sure.
It wouldn't have been the same without you, so thanks for joining.
No question.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Take care. So for me, and what I'm, and it's actually getting a little bit, the emotions of the lessons that I've learned along the way have started to catch me a little bit, because Alex went through a transformative experience, and the person who introduced me to Alex is this next guest, Brian Bro. Brian, thanks for joining.
Thrilled to be here, Govind. Congratulations on all that you've done and the lives that you've been able to impact with your program.
I kind of feel right now very selfish, because it feels like I've gotten the most out of it. And so Brian is, and at the time when I was in the class, it was the facilitator for a program called the Entrepreneurial Masters Program. It's an EO Entrepreneurs Organization program that's held at Endicott House in Dedham, Massachusetts. It's an MIT institution, so it's an MIT Enterprise Forum product, but mostly an EO product. And so at the time, the construct is that many people come in as faculty, and you curate the faculty as being the facilitator, Brian, and you brought Alex in, and you masterfully sort of bring people along. And we've known each other through EO for quite a while. You were actually episode number 3, and really, in truth, episode number 2. Episode number 1, we're going to hear from her later on, Gina Mollicone-Long, and you were the second episode. It was one big interview with Gina, and if you know Gina, she has a lot to share as well, and we split it up into 2 episodes. But your napkin blew me away. It was the impact of vulnerability, and it was in that moment when I got that napkin that I realized that this was not going to be what I thought it was going to be, because that napkin surprised me. What's different for you since sharing that napkin? I mean, it's 3 years ago. What do you want to share?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, just because I think my own journey and self-awareness around the power and impact of vulnerability just becomes more and more significant for me. I think that back in the time, I thought that you need to be willing to be vulnerable in order to be, successful. And over the journey of the past 3 years, I believe that it's not a matter of needing to be willing to be vulnerable, but that you have to be vulnerable. And it's not as much about success for me as it is about significance. Success typically is judged by external sources, and there's usually a number tied to it. It's success based on reaching certain goals tied to money, typically, and climbing the corporate ladder and so forth. But for me, life is more about living a life of significance. And so for me, vulnerability is essential for that. So it's living a life of significance, striving to be extraordinary or living a life that matters is, to me, vulnerability is absolutely essential for that. And I say that because if you're going to push yourself to be significant or live a life of significance, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to fail. You're going to get hurt. You're going to make mistakes. And when you know those things are going to happen, you have to be vulnerable in order to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But what's the difference between doing vulnerability as a thing and being vulnerable? Because every single time you say it is you have to be, you have to be, you have to be. But a lot of people just sort of do vulnerability, right? Like they just sort of say things that make them seem vulnerable, but it's not the same as being vulnerable. Those things are different, aren't they?
Yeah, I think I don't want to assume what you mean, so I can answer it from my words on why I use the words, be vulnerable, because it's a mindset. Life is hard. Life doesn't come easy, as you well know. And so when you, it's not a matter of being willing to be hurt or being willing to fail. It's knowing that you're going to, and yet doing it anyways. So it's just the way you approach something.
Knowing that you're going to fail, but doing it anyway. And I think that's it's amazing, because there's so many times, there's a video, and I'm not going to remember her name, but there's a woman who's actually the first ever Marvel Comics author who's a woman, and she's in charge of this one particular comic book. And she says that her version of heroes is heroes go into battle all the time knowing that they can't win, but they go in anyway, and they go in wholeheartedly. And it was interesting that you used that, we have to go, we have to be, we have to try, even though sometimes we're going to lose. And sometimes we know we're going to lose before we try, but we have to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that exactly when you're going to fail, because you probably would try to work around that if you knew where and when you were going to fail. I think it's a matter of, again, to live an extraordinary life, you're going to push yourself to do things that the average person may not. And in doing so, you need to know that you're going to get hurt and you're going to fail and you're going to fall down. You're going to make decisions that you look back and say, wow, I probably would do that differently if I did it again. But knowing that that's going to happen, you just drive forward anyways, and you embrace it when it happens, and you just get better.
So again, this was October of 2013, episode number 3, a long time ago. You did the Paper Napkin Wisdom. You put it out there. You live a highly authentic life. You live a very, very much. You're very much a person who lives in integrity. What's changed for you around vulnerability, specifically because of doing the napkin? Has anything changed?
I guess I use the word vulnerability more now that I kind of put it out there on the paper napkin. I've learned a lot in the past few years about, not needing to be right, that it's okay to not need to be right. That, when you're going to take a stand for something, sometimes that can be lonely, and that there's times in your life when the most significant thing you can do is just be totally present for the person that needs you in that moment. And that's probably where I've grown the most.
There's a really amazing quote based on what you just said, that you actually shared last time, is that vulnerability allows you to connect or combine intellect and heart. And that really, to me, defines who you are. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming. And on and off air, I've learned a lot from you over the last 3 years, and I like what you just shared. I think that opens the door to a lot of people who are listening to think about vulnerability in a slightly different way, from a slightly different perspective. So this was Brian Bro. Pure Room is one of your companies, but most importantly, I know you through Entrepreneurs Organization, not most importantly, but significantly for us, I know you through Entrepreneurs Organization, where you are actually the chairman-elect. So thanks for joining, Brian.
Well, hey, pleasure to be here. And I can see the two of my most favorite people in the world following behind me on the screen here. So I leave you, and I am humbled to be in the presence of all these great people on here. So thank you very much.
I'm grateful for you coming. Thank you. So we go from episode number 3 guest to episode number 1, 2, and then 78. Gina Mollicone-Long, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. You're unusual for you. You're a little quieter than usual.
Oh, well, that's just because my voice has been used. I'll get closer.
Yeah, no, you fixed that fast. So Gina, it's fabulous to see you. So for people who don't know, Gina actually gave me napkin number 1 a full year before we recorded Paper Napkin Wisdom. It was in November 10th of 2012. We were at a restaurant in Ottawa, and you scribbled out, "The only thing that stands between your greatness is the distance between your head and your heart. Make the connection and change your mind, change your life." And a lot's changed for me from the time you wrote that down. But I also want to get to what's sort of changed for you. Like what's gone on for you since you wrote that down now 4 years ago, but we did the first paper napkin together in October of 2013, a full year later. So just for people listening, it took me 1 year to act on the first napkin. After going to number 2, I went from 2 to 40 in the space of a month and a half. And blew up. And I write about what changed for me in the Paper Napkin Wisdom book. But what's changed for you, Gina?
Since that time, not much. We took our family around the world for a year-long world tour, educating them on the world's greatness. We moved to Whistler. I got my master trainer of hypnosis, the master trainer of NLP. We launched a bunch of new programs. So, pretty much just nothing.
No.
Oh, and I remember writing that napkin. I remember specifically it was a cocktail napkin because that was the first time I'd ever had a gin martini in my life. And since then, I've become kind of a connoisseur of artisan gin around the world, which has, it's kind of like a little cool thing to learn about all these artisan distillers and how they differentiate their gins and their botanicals. So it's been kind of like a little arty project on the side. And it all came from that meeting.
No way, because I do remember that day they had, and I couldn't tell you which one it was, but it was this really cool, and the server had this elaborate story about this gin and why it was special and why it would be worth trying. When I look back at the napkins, and you've given me a number of napkins, one of the ones that I love the most is this flexibility of behavior is the mark of true leadership. So many times as a leader, you hear people say, "That's not my style. That's not the way I work. That's not," and that becomes something to create distance from the leader and the team. It's changed the way I work. It's changed the way I think. Has sharing these napkins out loud and doing anything other than becoming a gin expert, has it been beneficial to you to remind yourself of these pearls of wisdom?
I love the napkins because like you and most people that run companies, our attention spans are short. So while I like to read an entire book on E=mc², as you know, sometimes you just need the anchor of the napkin to shoot you back into the profound thought that keeps you on your point or on the thing that you're going for. A quote that I heard well, I hear all the time, but that I was reminded of recently was don't give up what you want most for what you want now. And so that you know, especially when you're leading something and you say that's not my style or whatever, well, if what you want is really what you want, then make it your style so that you can get what you want. Instead of being right, you'll have what you want, which I think is the goal, right? So you can be right or you can be happy. And I don't know that a leader sets out to be right. I think they set out to get what they want.
Yeah, and it's really in the flexibility of behavior. I mean, the thing that I did yesterday, fundamentally, like we understand this, right? The thing that I did yesterday brought me here, but if I'm going to go somewhere else tomorrow, I need to change what that thing is today, right? I can't fundamentally behave in the same way I did yesterday. Otherwise, I'm just going to be here again.
Yes. Right.
And I don't want to be here again.
Right. That's it. You nailed it. Now live it every day. I mean, I think when you did that first napkin and you said, oh, I'm going to do this, I was like, well, how long do you think it's going to take? And I distinctly recall saying, cut that in half.
Yeah. You were a pain in the butt about that.
Because whatever we think it's going to take, like Brian was just saying, just do it. Who cares? I mean, just do it anyway. And I love what he was saying, although I don't think you need to go in knowing you're going to fail. You're probably going to fail. But I think it's the going in with your heart open regardless of what happens. Right?
Yeah. And if we, I think that what's, so you did say that. So here's the way that conversation went on the 12th, in 2012 in November, we sat down and I think I said it was going to take me 5 years to get the book done. And for those of you who, so I said, there's no way I could cut that in half. It's impossible. And you said, well, you're right. If you think it's impossible, you're right. But you know, what if, you just said, what if, what would have to change if you could change that way of thinking? The other thing that you challenged me to think, and it's actually the thing that stays with me the most out of all the conversations we've had, is I told you that night my life story, and there was a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And you looked at me and you said, hey, someone once convinced you, or must have convinced you, that, you know, what goes up comes down and things have to operate in cycles. Why did you believe them? And I did have one more, you know, I was in the middle of a bad negative cycle at that stage. And I can say that resoundingly, it's been going straight up since then. So thank you.
But here's an interesting thing. You call it a bad negative cycle, but I mean, it's just about to be autumn and it's my favorite time of year in the part of the world that you live in. So I think if you went out to a tree and said, is this a bad negative cycle that your leaves are going to change color and fall off? They no, it's just a cycle, right? It doesn't have to be bad negative. Those down cycles that you're referring to could be creative development cycles. Then they're not bad. Then they're awesome.
Yeah. Fair enough. Good point.
Just labels.
Yeah. No, and another thing for me to work on. Gina, thank you for everything you've done for Paper Napkin Wisdom. Thank you for being on, and thank you for helping me celebrate from 1 to 150.
Celebrate in person in a couple days, I think, in a week, right?
That's right. We're having dinner in a week.
Almost to the day.
Almost to the day. Thanks, Gina.
Okay. Ciao.
Yeah. Warren, are you there?
I think I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you.
Well, I'm sorry you can see me, but I'm glad you can hear me.
Warren, so most of you, I don't know if people know this or not. I certainly say this often, but I was inspired to create Paper Napkin Wisdom after sitting in the back of a bus ride at the end of the Leadership Academy, an entrepreneurs organization, which you are the dean of. And you had just curated 3 days of mind-blowing leadership growth for me. And I sat there and you'd already motivated us to think about starting each day with intentions, 10 minutes of thinking great thoughts, writing great thoughts, and reading great thoughts. Not in that order, in the reverse order. And I just got lost into what should I write? What could I possibly read? Where could I start? And I started to write down everything that people had told me over those last 3 days. And that's where it started. And that's where Paper Napkin Wisdom came from. So I often credit you as the reason why I started this. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And you started on your own, and you're to be congratulated for the success of Paper Napkin Wisdom. I think it's brought a lot of people, a lot of inspiration and joy. and has led them to lead better lives. And that's the important thing. You've made a great contribution.
Well, thank you. You have impacted so many people, and you know, your paper napkin was episode number 113. Because of how I revere you as my mentor, it is definitely among my favorites. I listen to it even now frequently. The napkin itself was one success is relevant only when measured against one's potential. And what I love about that is that it provides us room to recognize how much room we have for growth all the time. How do you live that in your life?
Well, I think every day gives us the opportunity to learn something new, to grow in new ways, to alter or change who we are. That's the great thing about being a human being. That separates us from everything else. So I think the opportunity to continue to grow and learn, whether that's a child teaching me something, or it's a spouse teaching me something, or it's a business partner, the opportunity to continue to grow. And as I grow and learn, I increase my potential and my capacity. And so as I measure my own success, I can only measure it against my own potential. I can't measure it against yours, Govind, or anyone else's. And I think too often in our society, we begin to compare ourselves against others, when really we only have to compare ourselves to ourselves. And it's a little bit like playing golf. There are people who play golf and they try to beat their opponent. But golf is about beating the golf course, not beating your opponent. And I think in our own development, it's about leading ourselves. It's about defining ourselves. It's about altering ourselves. And when we do that, then we're unlimited in our capacity.
I think that idea of possibility, right? Evoking that possibility, that unlimited possibility, was really, so that's what you wrote about a little bit in your contribution to Paper Napkin Wisdom. So for those of you who don't know, the foreword was written by Warren Rustand in Paper Napkin Wisdom book, and you talk about possibility when things are challenging, because for entrepreneurs things do get challenging. When things are challenging, what's a quick thing that you do to focus on possibility?
Well, all of us are challenged, right? I've started 17 companies. I've been CEO of many companies, many public companies and private companies. And we all run into hard times. We all make mistakes. We do dumb things. We make misjudgments. And so we are all faced with adversity in different ways, and it tries us in different ways. I always focus on the possibility that a trial or an adversity is simply another way to prove our character. It's simply another way to think about our possibilities and our potential, and to demonstrate that we can overcome anything. And whether that's physical, or it's emotional or mental, or it's business, whatever it might be, I think we have this unlimited capacity, and I think we have the ability to overcome all odds. And I think we see this around us all the time in a variety of ways. And so I think we need to constantly be optimistic and constantly be happy and thoughtful, gratitude for what we have, grateful for the challenges we face, and the opportunities to prove ourselves once again. Because I don't think until they put us in the grave, right, that our adversity stops. I think it's always there. I think challenges always face us. So I always focus on the positive, the optimistic, the glass half full. The fact is that I'm continuing to grow and develop, and therefore I can overcome this.
I find that so strikingly similar to your take on influence, and it's something that I've really embraced. You talk about influence in a very unique way as it relates to, sort of related to farming. Can you share that sort of idea of how influence is like planting crops?
Well, I think that we can either influence or we can direct. And oftentimes we get hung up on directing people to do things, right? When in fact what we want to do is influence them in ways which allow them to discover for themselves the right course and the correct action and their own unlimited capacity. And so what we want to do is Johnny Appleseed, right? We want to continuously plant seeds of influence, which then allow those seeds to grow in their own way and develop in their own way, encompassing their own thing. I think influencing people is much more profound than simply trying to direct people as to what to do or how to families and raising children, right? We want to influence our children in constructive, positive ways and allow them to grow themselves. as opposed to simply directing them what to do. We take away from them something when we direct them. We create something for them.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Warren, I am excited because I get to see you in just a couple of weeks on Lake Powell, which is a beautiful natural playground for a retreat where we'll evoke possibility and think about what the next year looks like.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming and joining here.
Forward to seeing you. Thank you for allowing me to be with you. Congratulations. Happy anniversary. Keep up the good work. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
Dave Sanderson, are you on Paper Napkin Wisdom? No, but I think Michael Cato is. Michael,
yes.
Cato, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can see you. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Doing awesome. Enjoying a little downtime after the transaction to just recenter on the kids and the family and think about what the next company's going to be.
So what transaction are you talking about?
We recently, well, actually a year and a half ago, went to market with the company to raise some capital and ended up being approached by a strategic buyer, Grubhub, a public technology company here in the U.S., and they acquired us. They acquired us for our team and our capability, and now they're using our team to help build out what we built, but they're doing it much faster across the country with a bigger footprint than we had.
Yeah, which is really incredible. I mean, amazing growth in Restaurants on the Run to where you eventually, moved it into the market, got acquired, and so you were on Paper Napkin Wisdom in July of 2014.
Yes.
It was episode number 91, and you talked about your doctor. You talked about Dr. Chang. Don't forget Dr. Chang and your vital factors.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about back then was how important it is to look at the key measurements that are important in your company, check up on where you are on your progress, and bring everybody together in a meaningful way to be able to do something about it, right?
Exactly.
How important was that to getting you to the place where you actually were acquired?
Well, I mean, it was critical because, it allowed us to do a couple things. Number one, we were clearly able to take the vision of the company and where we were trying to go, link it to the strategy by metrics and measurements, and then link it all the way back down to the frontline employees. So from top to bottom, everyone in the organization knew how their work on a daily basis impacted the strategy and the vision of the company. So that's the very first thing it did. The second thing it did would be it created tremendous accountability. So everybody knew where they stood, where the company stood at all times. So we were able to be completely transparent. So when, the company was acquired, as I said, they took the entire team because our team understood what accountability meant. They understood how to get their employees engaged by the use of accountability, which seems hard to do, but is probably the key to engagement.
Oh, it's amazing. Doesn't it sort of like fly counter to the way we do things to start off with, right? I mean, we kind of hold all those key metrics close to us because we don't think the numbers are good enough, and we better not share the numbers that suck with our team because then they know how much we suck, and they won't want to work with us, and right? There's a whole narrative that comes out of that.
Yeah, and I think I think it takes time for entrepreneurs to get comfortable with that level of transparency, especially on a financial standpoint. But on the operational standpoint, I think for me personally, when I realized that, I couldn't have the big red S on my shirt. I had to delegate and empower my people. They're the ones that make it happen. So once I came to that decision and was able to do that, empower them, delegate, empower them, hold them accountable. That's when the company grew because there was more than just one or two people looking at numbers. There was a whole bevy of managers looking at them.
Yeah.
They want that. People want that. People want to understand how they're successful, how they succeed. They want to have structure, systems, habits, rituals, rhythms. That's important, not only in life when you're raising a family, but when you're raising a business.
Yeah. So you talk about this a lot, right? You talk about how raising a business is like raising a family. You talk about taking care of the business is like taking care of your body, and you need to do all of these things in the same way. What are you doing now that the business is not front and center? I mean, it's great to see you're actually wearing a shirt this time. Last time I was on a call with you, you weren't wearing a shirt. So thank you for putting a shirt on. Appreciate it.
I put a long sleeve shirt on for you because I just got back.
Especially appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, I'll tell you right now, it's funny you say that because you're right. Running a business is very much like, operating your body. And I use that example. I did that in Paper Wisdom number 91. But what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to take all those concepts that I apply on my personal life or in my personal life, all those concepts I applied in my business, everything from planning to celebrations, accountability. And I'm trying to figure it out with my kids. This is choosing. I have 3 little boys, and it's choosing to be, it's becoming much more difficult to do it with them than it was in my business or in my personal life, because they've got a mind of their own. They're growing, and their brains are developing, and it's pretty challenging. So I'm right now currently I'm staying very active in the entrepreneurial ecosystem between EO, YPO. I'm a trainer for Accelerator, but I'm really kind of taking some downtime to focus on the boys and how to make sure that we've got accountability and consequences in our house.
And how's that working out?
It's pretty tough. I get a lot of no's and talking back. And in fact, it was actually like my forum presentation for my Quantum Leap forum recently, just about this. So it's been great. It's great.
So when you think about the plan, because one of the things you talked about was thinking about what you're going to do next and what the next company is going to be and what kind of, how
Yep.
do you move between the old company, the focus now on family, because you differentiated greatly between, what you do in your personal life, what you did in business life, and now what you're trying to do in the family life. And how do you think about getting back in the business without losing momentum on that professional side, on that business side?
Yeah. You know what? The best answer for that is going to be, I think like Vern Harnish talks about like radical rituals, or structuring your business creates radical freedom. It's the same thing here. It's like having good rituals in my personal life and in my family life and in my, marriage life, so that if things are on track or if I'm on a schedule with certain things, as much as you can be with kids, but the rituals like family dinners and vacations and one-to-one time and all that type of stuff, the more rituals that I have in all aspects of my life, the easier it is, the more freedom I have to go and focus on a business. And I'm going to do a business. My next business will be different than the way I did the last business. The way I spend my time and the way I hire and delegate and so on and so forth. So it'll be challenging, but I'm sure it's doable. I've got time now.
You got time. So in what specifically changed, did anything change after you shared the Dr. Chang and your vital factors? Was there any difference for you about how you lived that in your life after doing your paper napkin?
Rephrase that question. What do you mean? I'm not following the question.
Because this is something that you did before you shared it on Paper Napkin Wisdom. After coming on the show, like after airing it and after putting it out there in the world, did it change for you when you went back into the office? Did how you live it change in any way, shape, or form?
I think I was living it already. I think what it did is the more I talk about it, the more I realize that there's gaps for me to close. It really makes me better. So when I teach it, I constantly am looking at it and saying, gosh, maybe I'm not as buttoned up on a personal level and a business level as I could, because what I'm saying while we do that and have done it, gosh, I wonder if I could be that much better at it. And so that's really, when I talk about it and train it, it actually makes me think about how I can take my game to the next level. So that's really the change.
Yeah. So it's that idea that you're comparing yourself against yourself and trying to make it better. You're always trying to make it better. Always. And that's the beauty of being around, your peers from an entrepreneurial perspective. It's you constantly, you're not comparing, but what you compare yourself to your best you, because you want to be your best you for your employees, your best you for your wife, your best you for your kids and your friends, but you just get inspired when you're around other great people. I love, talking to people about this concept of you're the average of the 5 closest people that you hang around with. And, you become your thought, that type of stuff. I love that. And I see that. It's like when you're around great people, you strive to be great. Yeah. And I think that for me, that's the thing that came out of Paper Napkin Wisdom. It put me around people who were constantly pushing me to think, and you've always done that. episode 91, Michael Cato, now father, always previously father as well, but now focused on that. As being
Daddy deep dive. I'm doing a daddy deep dive.
Daddy deep dive for the next little while.
Yep.
Thanks for coming back. Thanks for helping me celebrate the 150th episode.
Hey, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I appreciate it, Gove. Happy anniversary, and looking forward to number 300.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay, buddy.
All right.
Take care. Bye.
You know, before we jump on to the next guest who's already here, Steve, I'm just going to ask you to stand by for 1 second. You know, one of the things that's amazing, I think, as we go through this is just how many lessons, how many pearls of wisdoms there have been, and how many people have gotten something from it from even being on the show. I want to welcome our next guest with that, Steve Sims. Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. Thanks for joining me for the 150th.
Hey, I'm thrilled to be doing it. I'm actually, believe it or not, racing Ducatis today, but I actually stopped between race. So if you can hear something noisy in the background, there you go. That's what you're doing. So I'm all leathered up, and but it's the 150th, so I had to be here.
Right on, Steve. That's awesome. So, you know, Steve, when you did your paper napkin, you did it in your garage, and if you remember, like you were like screaming it out, like you were screaming.
Well, you froze on me.
Yeah, sorry, you were screaming at me, and I was screaming at you. It was a great, powerful.
Hey.
Are you there? So we were sort of just going at each other, and I think Steve's connection is not that great right now, but we were going at each other, and it was amazing because you were standing up doing your paper napkin. Ducati's all behind you in your garage, and I'm sitting there going, I'm sort of holding onto my handles because I wanted to get up, but I couldn't get up. And so since that day, I changed everything about how I do the napkins. I stand up for all of them. In fact, I have a standing desk now. This is the first time I've been sitting since that day.
Yeah, there's something about standing up that just gets the juices flowing and gets you engaged. And you're just more game on. No one sits down to fight, so no one should sit down to work.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. So your napkin was, if there's no passion, there's no point. And that was napkin number 134. It was April of this year. And let me ask you, I mean, it was just a little while ago before you did it, but has anything changed for you since sharing that about yourself? Like, by sharing it, did it change the way you look at that?
No, I'm a blunt instrument. I always keep things real simple and stupid. And just like anyone that's ever done anything from golf, tennis, karate, anything like that, motorcycling, stick to the basics and you'll just become better naturally. So by sticking to that, you know, if I look at something, it doesn't get me aroused, doesn't give me a hard on, doesn't stop me sleeping at night, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, and you know what? There was a little thing that you slipped on, or we touched on when we were doing the paper napkin, and we were just talking about your teacher, right? You went to see your kid's teacher, and the teacher was saying something like, "Oh, you know, they just shouldn't sweat the small stuff. They shouldn't." And you lost your crap over it. It was like, "What are you talking about? They have to sweat the small stuff. There's nothing other than the small stuff to sweat."
It's only the small stuff. It's the small stuff that'll bite you. It's the small stuff that'll trip you up. When you're riding a motorcycle, I'll talk about it in a motorcycle term, the engine never falls out. You get a nail in the tire or a chink in the chain. It's the tiny shit that throws you off.
Yeah, so when you think about that, so your business, Bluefish, is creates amazing experiences for people. And, man, you sent me a picture of where you were at Oman in Lake Powell. This place is ridiculous. So you create amazing experiences for people and have done it at the Oscars, you've done it at the Grammys, you've done it everywhere. When you say sweat the small stuff, how essential has that been to your success in business?
Well, when a client gets involved, if he wants to sit on the second row center, then that's where he's sitting. So that's the small stuff. Just stick to that kind of accuracy and everything else will come through. So, you know, like we got people going to the Emmys this weekend. So we've got to make sure the car picks them up at exactly 5:15, not 5:20, not 5:10, 5:15, that engine's rolling out. So we just stick to those basics, and really you're limiting the ability for anything else to go wrong. So if you stick to the baby stuff, stick to the details, then the problems don't really have a chance to leak in.
Yeah, so when you think about it, though, it's so easy to get caught up in other stuff, like caught up in the glamour or the or the bigger picture, or what will people think, or what will people say? How do you stay grounded on those little details? How do you get your team grounded on them?
Well, I think for a start, I'm an arsehole. And I think I don't actually buy into all that bullshit. So, you know, if a client wants to go to something, hey, that's great for you, but would I go? More than likely not. But I want to make sure that it's something that you dream about for the rest of your life. So I think the fact that I'm actually not too enamored by celebrities and events and red carpets and things like that, I go into it with my eyes wide open. It's like going to a nightclub in the daylight, you know, when all the lights aren't flashing. You just see a completely different environment. So people go along and go, wow, I'm going to be near so-and-so. For me, I want to know how near, what my seat number is, where will I be, what time will I be sat there, what time will it be over, what time does the party start. You know, I want to know those details. So funny enough, I don't think I'm very analytical, but by being that anal, as I say, you don't give yourself the chance to slip up.
Yeah, and one of the other things that you talk about also is just being yourself, like no BS, none of that shit. Just being yourself all the time, authentically showing up in that way. And one time you sort of like lost your way and bought a car instead of riding around on bikes all the time, right? And how that didn't work out so well. How do you catch yourself, like now that you've gotten better at staying grounded on that stuff, how do you do that authentically with the new things that you haven't experienced yet?
It's very easy to be you. That's the first thing. So if you're trying to, if you find effort in how you're dressing or how you're being or how your tone of voice is or how your grammar is, then you're detracting from who you really are. I can't spell for shit. You know, my grammar is what it is. I say exactly what I feel. I pray I don't upset anyone or hurt anyone's feelings, but there's no miscommunication when someone's talking to me. And that transparency, that clarity makes things really easy. So I like things to be easy.
Yeah, and you have a really simple test, right? As to whether or not you preserved a relationship. What's the test?
The chug test. It's the chug test. If I look at someone and I want to sit down and sip a whiskey with them, then great, I'll do business with them. If I find it's painful speaking with them, communicating with them, then I can't see the point, because relationships don't always get better. If someone starts as an arsehole, they're not going to suddenly heal overnight. So my chug test has got me through a lot of good things.
I love the chug test. I've used the chug test so many times in conversation. It's awesome. And in fact, one time I was speaking about somebody and they weren't there, but we just said, hey, they wouldn't pass the chug test. And everybody was looking at me like I was absolutely freaking crazy. No, you gotta listen to Steve's Paper Napkin. It's all there.
Hey, just keep it simple.
Yeah, that's awesome. Steve, thank you for taking a break from racing.
It was a pleasure. Congratulations on the 150th, sir. I really appreciate you being out there helping us and others get some clarity on stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
See you later, guys. Bye.
See you, man. So, you know, we're now sort of at the end. This is the end, and you know, there's a really neat thing that we do in my forum, and it's called takeaway value. At the end of every session, at the end of everything that we do, when we present something, present an issue, and we share about it in our forum, we go around and we do a takeaway value. So if you're on Facebook Live, you know, just pitch in with your takeaway value. I'd love to see it, love to contribute to that, and and I'm going to make sure that I go in there and interact with everybody that's there. But I've got my forum mates just on the other side of this gigantic screen. I can now see them. They're waving. Guys, could I get you to just share a takeaway value? George, what was your takeaway value from today? He's speechless. He's speechless. All right. Who wants to chime in? Takeaway value. Who's got one?
Focus on the little stuff. The big stuff will fall in place.
So Pierre says, focus on the little stuff. The big stuff will fall in place. Anybody else? Chime in.
For me, it was, I've heard all those paper napkins, and just it's interesting, A, seeing the person who's giving it, and B, just remembering all the things that were said, and it's like, crap, there's so much good content there.
Yeah. So Mark, can I get you to come around here? Because I think this is important for everybody. So This guy, Mark Wardrop, is the reason why this podcast even exists. So Mark is a forum mate of mine, and some years ago he took me out for a coffee, and he said, hey, you know, because I'd been coming to forum saying I've got this paper napkin idea, and I didn't really do anything with it. I didn't have time because I was too busy putting out fires in my life. And Mark takes me out for a cup of coffee and says, hey, I've got this podcast. I listened to this podcast, and you should take a listen to it. I listened to it, thought it was a ridiculous waste of time, met for coffee within the next few days and said, why would you waste my time like that? I could do better. And he didn't say anything. And that was all he had to say. So he motivated me to get to that place where I could do something and start Paper Napkin Wisdom. So that was amazing. So thank you, Mark. And Mark said that he's listened to all the paper napkins and it's
only at 142.
Oh, you got eight. So almost all of them. You've heard all the people that were on today, and that's amazing. It's amazing. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Next, Guy, you have one takeaway value?
Still thinking.
If George is ready, George can cut you off. What you got?
Goosebumps with many of those great speeches. Just reinforces being around peers and being around people like your napkins or being able to learn so much from.
Yeah, so just the experience is pretty amazing. Sean.
Yeah, there's a couple. I'll start with the fact that everyone, and this sort of aligns with something I shared with you earlier, but everyone wishes you well. They generally want you to succeed. And truth be told, everyone came on and celebrated something that you do 15 minutes, 30 minutes at a time, just 149 other times. And now they'll stop what they're doing. They'll interrupt time on a racetrack. They'll come in between a meeting. They'll end a call early to come and celebrate your very valuable contribution. And it's an honor to be a part of that, both as a customer of the product and just simply as a witness of it. So thanks very much. The value that I'm taking away is little small half hours can add up to make a huge difference. And I'm grateful to witness that firsthand.
It's overwhelming to hear. I mean, really, for me, my why, my purpose is to help people recognize the small difference that can make a big difference in their life. So small change that can make a big difference in their life. And then understanding that together we can change the world. And that's what Paper Napkin Wisdom is all about for me. It's been that for me. I know that someone else has just joined. Who's joined? Maybe nobody has joined.
It's Wendy.
Hey, Wendy. Hey, Wendy. Thanks for joining. How are you?
I'm thrilled to be here. Excellent.
So Wendy, I asked Wendy to join because Wendy is the person who sort of gave me the little push that I needed to do this. Wendy at Content Bacon has been a huge support in helping me get the word out. And also, when I stumbled over the fact that we were coming up on our 150th episode today, I threw out this idea of, hey, what about a town hall? What about if we got people to come in and we could interact with people in some kind of live way? You just jumped into it. So thank you, Wendy, for doing that. I really appreciate you for doing that.
Yeah, and congratulations. It looks like it's been a ton of fun, and you've had amazing guests, and I'm sorry I missed out on the champagne.
The champagne's to come. The champagne's to come. Let me ask you, why is Paper Napkin Wisdom important to you? Because you've been listening to the show for a while.
You know, it's just such a great podcast because it's so applicable to all of the things that, you know, as an entrepreneur, as a growing business that I'm dealing with. And it just gives me things that I can take away and apply like at that moment, you know, and they're not, I mean, some of them feel little, but they're all just big. And I mean, I just love the podcast. I love how you interact with your guests and the value that they bring. And again, it just gives me tools to grow my business, to deal with the things I'm dealing with, and just to be a better leader, a better entrepreneur, a better person.
Yeah. So Wendy from Content Bacon is a participant in the EO Accelerator program in South Florida. That's how I got introduced to you, and you know, it's fun to go from the first impression exercise that we did a few weeks ago,
right,
over dinner,
right,
to now where we're talking about this stuff, and it's an amazing, right? When we are open to learning from different people and different perspectives, we can get a lot out of it, and I think that genuine curiosity has been something that's really fueled me throughout all my time on Paper Napkin Wisdom. And that's what I think keeps me going and wanting to get more and more people on the show and learn more and more from the people that are coming on. Guy, did you get your takeaway value yet? You thought I forgot about you.
Yeah, just to keep it simple. Also the value of great people that you get to know and share all of your experiences and be open.
Yeah, so keeping it simple and sharing those experiences and being open, I think it's, you know, I think we can learn from anyone around us, right, Wendy? I mean, you're part of a great group in South Florida, and I think it's a phenomenal group of people who really push each other. The value in this kind of a forum, I think, is that we create this pearl of wisdom, this small thing that we can remember the lessons from, because there's so many things. It would be impossible, I think, to take all the learning, even though Jack Daly and I really tried in the book, in the Paper Napkin Wisdom book, and even though we really tried to get it all in the book, it would be impossible to take all of that learning and put it in one place. But what I think is amazing is the napkins are almost like the window, and it opens us up to having the conversation with ourselves about what else was there. And that's sort of what you said a little bit, Mark, right? I mean, it's just so rich. There's so much there. How could you possibly get it all? My napkin, and I referred to this at the beginning of the show, and I even said this to you, Wendy, as well, that my napkin, Rob Simons, at the end of the first year, so somewhere around December of 2013, he reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like to do your paper napkin. I'd like to turn it around on you and get your paper napkin wisdom. And Rob interviewed me, and I found it enormously challenging to take an idea and write it down, something that was really important to me, and write it down. And I wrote down, and it's on the back of the book as well, if you want to grow, you have to do what scares you and do it in public. And the idea of Paper Napkin Wisdom, when I started, it terrified me, because I wondered if anyone would ever listen. I wondered, why would I do this thing that no one would ever listen? But I knew I needed it for me. And then what was amazing is that people would come up from all over the place and say, hey, I listened to that episode. And it really gave me fuel. Then doing this show today, this live stream, I found equally terrifying. So, you know, and Wendy, you didn't let me get too scared about it. Although I do think you fanned the flames more than once, but I think it was terrifying to just to conceive of doing a live stream. What happens if nobody watches? What happens if none of the guests come? What happens if technology fails? Which, by the way, it did a few times. And I think surrounding yourself with people, so I want to leave this thought before we close this off, because some of the most important people in my life, in my journey through Paper Napkin Wisdom are around me right now, and I want to celebrate with this with them. But before I leave this, I want to say how important it is, and I say this a lot, and Wendy and I are working on a project right now called Make It Bad, Make It Better, and it's going to be my next book that she and I are writing together. And when we think about all of these things, for me, surrounding myself with people has been the only way that has ever been able to get me through anything. And so getting through today, it was aligning myself with Wendy. So thank you, Wendy, for helping.
You're welcome. My honor.
And your team at Content Bacon. So thank you, Content Bacon, for everything you did today to make today a success. But it was also asking my forum for help and being vulnerable to saying, hey, you know, we're doing this thing. I'm doing this thing on Friday, and would you come and help? And then I went out to the contributors of Paper Napkin Wisdom and was overwhelmed by so many of you who've come up, and I'm deeply grateful for all of you. And I'm deeply grateful for everybody who's watched the show, listened to the show, been a fan of the show, and then later on maybe share this with somebody else. Remember that Paper Napkin Wisdom is and will always be entirely free. It is available on iTunes and Stitcher. My name is Govind Jayaraman, and this was episode number 150 for Paper Napkin Wisdom. Thanks for watching. Make it a great week.
What would you do if you could get the world's best entrepreneurs in a room and ask them anything? Well, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we do just that. With the help of their stories, we help entrepreneurs like you change the world. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.